Good morning, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman right here on TV 33 WHPR, Comcast 90 in Detroit and Oakland County, and all over the world courtesy of the World Wide Web. And I'm very excited about this morning. I have two co-hosts with me today for Table Talk, and we're going to have a wonderful morning. But first, let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
I'm Ken Coleman, Detroit-based historian and author.
I'm Daron Calhoun, director of the Richmond local office of the EEOC.
Richmond. Is
Virginia.
that Virginia?
Yes, the cradle of the Confederacy.
Gonna have some fun today.
Well, as we know, Ken is the writer of On This Day in African American Life in Detroit. And on this day, in 2004, hip hop recording act Slum Village, the pride of Conant Gardens, enters the Billboard Hot 100 chart at number 99 with their single Selfish, a collaboration with hip hop star Kanye West and R&B crooner John Legend. I didn't know that. The song will peak at number 55 on the Hot 100 and number 20 on the Black Singles list. Too bad I don't know that song. You know, I usually try to sing a little bit of a song.
Yeah, you do. That was the jam. I think 10, 12, 11 years ago, I guess.
Golly.
Yeah, had a nice R&B groove. You would like it.
Yeah, I guess I would.
It's not David Ruffin or Eddie Kendricks.
Exactly. It's not the Temptations.
Or the Temptations.
You are. Oh, anyway. Okay, everybody, listen. I wanted to talk first about the bikers. Let's talk about what happened as far as, in Texas. That was a rout last Sunday, I think it was.
Well, let's talk about what didn't happen. Nobody called them thugs.
Okay.
Or at least I haven't seen.
Murderous thugs.
I Googled that word in association with the story. I didn't see it.
Yeah, nobody
There was no tanks. There were no canisters of tear gas and police riot gear. While these guys they had automatic weapons, and they were shooting at each other and the police.
Cats are serious. I mean, some of the mug shots that I saw were pretty serious.
Right, and then they when they lined them up on the curb after they arrested them, they were just sitting there. They weren't laying out flat. They weren't put in shackles, head first into a paddy wagon so they can get a rough ride or anything.
I'm a former journalist, and there's an institution, out of Columbia College, University originally, but the Columbia Journalism Review periodically analyzes news stories and how coverage is different, how coverage is the same, how there are inconsistencies in coverage. When we close the book on 2015, y'all, I hope that some of these groups, or the Poynter Institute, takes a look at these two stories, the Baltimore story and the Waco, Texas story. Now, I'm not condoning anything that happened in Baltimore, certainly not condoning anything that happened in Texas, but just from a reporting perspective, words are very important. Lawyers and journalists live by them, how you choose them, how you choose to use them, words you use, words you don't. And this is a classic case study. Two incidences happening in, a handful of weeks?
A handful of weeks, right. And the reporting was so tremendously lopsided. They did cover-to-cover coverage. They did, hour-to-hour coverage in Baltimore, landed everyone. Had Don Lemon, had everyone from anyone from
Brenda's boy, Don Lemon.
I know, that's what I said. But had everyone there and saying, "Oh, this is just horrible. Let's follow this group of people. Let's follow them to see what they're going to do next. Oh, they're cutting and slashing a hose. Let's watch them do this." And here it is. These guys are shooting at police officers. Now these kids had rocks. They're shooting automatic weapons at police officers, and it's almost not even a blink on television.
And it started in the bathroom. That's what they say. But when you have two opposing gangs in one place, you know something's going to break out. Yeah. But something that tantamount.
Well, yeah, I mean,
tantamount to a massacre.
Yeah, and we don't know all the ins and outs of the story. We know enough to know that the coverage was inconsistent, obviously.
Well, that's the problem. We don't know ins and outs of it because there was no coverage.
No coverage. Yeah, it's a chicken and egg.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's just one of those. I mean, look, you tell your young people, as you raise your kids, you're living in America. And once you leave, if you happen to grow up here, once you leave this metropolitan area, America is a very different place. And we see it not only in how we interact with people in small towns when we're on road trips and visit people, but we see it now on the 24/7 news cycle. It's amazing to me.
I had an intern, and I just said those exact same words. I have an intern that started in my office just this week, and for whatever reason, he was real tired, went and laid on the couch. And this is a young man, young black man, and I went and talked to him and said, you know what, son, you are coming from an HBCU. You are an educated young black man, so this world is already coming after you. This is America. This is the United States. They're not going to be laying out the red carpet for you. So you can't come in here half stepping. You can't do that. And I said those exact same things. And I said, I'm gonna talk to you like I talk to my son. This is America. And as much as I love this country, as much as I think this is one of the best countries on earth, it's still America. It's still in this society, and we see it played out in this story. I mean, there were 2 or 3 rival gangs here, and there was a part of the story talking about the how the governor thought the president was coming after Texas, and he's going to mobilize his National Guard because the president's going to invade Texas.
Yeah, a lot of these cats want to secede, man. I mean, they
want to succeed from the
Union. It might as well be 230 or 40 years ago.
Exactly.
We're reliving the Civil War, especially with a guy named Barack Hussein Obama
in the White House. Right after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, there were a lot of African Americans in the Congress and Senate, and that's when they were, you know what, we got to get out of here, see what they're going to do. They're going to let the black folk take over the country, and then they're going to try and take over the world. Well, they're still playing that out.
Well, let's kind of go back to the fact that there were 9 dead, 18 wounded, and 200 arrested. I don't think that happened in that many arrests in Baltimore.
That happens at a party downtown on Saturday night in Detroit. At least the arrest
not the dead,
but the arrest part. Now, look,
not in the new downtown.
That's true. Well, not Midtown.
To make my point
I understand
was,
there are no cameras there.
I see national TV and local TV every day, and it hasn't been mentioned for the past day or 2.
No, it has not, and that's this country. That's how, CNN should be the first one. They should have Wolf Blitzer and updating news, hour to hour coverage, but they don't. I mean, it's they went and shot some. Oh well, those are just biker gangs. They're not thugs. They're gangs.
And the calmness of the chief of police down there. This is something like I never saw before.
Blitzer talking to somebody via satellite saying, "Why are you tearing up your own community?" Would Ronald Reagan want you to do this? Exactly. Like they say, would Dr. King want you to do this? It's the black folks.
Yeah, but I just think that it was just what if it was a group of black bikers? Do you think it would have gotten more?
If it were a group of black 10-speed bikers.
10-speed?
Not even motorcycles. If they were on 10 speeds doing a bike and one of them fell, they would have wall-to-wall coverage and explain how President Obama, his policy in the Middle East is what created the biker falling.
Well, we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the MOVE bombing in Philadelphia. And for those who remember,
I remember that live.
Absolutely. Black Mayor Wilson Goode, basically, bombing a community, project, where they all were inhabited, and that's what you see oftentimes in urban communities. Nothing like that has happened in Waco. And again, there's a disparity not only in the reporting, I talked a lot about that, but there's a disparity in terms of the law enforcement response.
And think about the fact that families were eating in the adjoining restaurants, other restaurants.
Chilling.
They were chilling, eating their Sunday breakfast or lunch, and these guys started shooting. And like you said, it was a shootout. And one of the times the camera forgot to block it out, but I saw some bodies laying there. Mm-hmm. It was just awful. Just awful. I don't know what's going to happen or why. And all motorcycle gangs I know are not violent. Most aren't. Well, I know some.
Right. I know from my there's a motor. I don't want to call it a gang. I think it's an organization at my church, and these are are bikers. They all have a good time, and
they travel.
They travel in together, but I don't think they carry automatic weapons and have gang and have SS tattooed on their heads. And
and that was something that someone brought up, that some of the bikers were neo-Nazi.
Right, but that wasn't news. That's not news. A kid throwing a brick in Baltimore is news. But
telling you, a great exercise is just to go to CNN, go to these 24/7 national and international websites, and just look at the adjectives that are used to describe the Waco group as opposed to the Baltimore group, or go 20 years back to South Central LA, or heaven forbid, go back to the urban rebellions of the 60s, and you just see it reported very differently.
Kind of related but not related, since we brought up Baltimore, was the fact that the grand jury did indict those 6. They changed some of the
it made them more harsh. they made the charges more harsh. I thought that I listened to that as I was traveling yesterday on XM radio, and that was the most awesome thing I ever heard. I mean, explain
to the audience what happened.
Well, right after Miriam Mosby, the state's attorney in Baltimore, after she charged those police officers in the death of
the gentleman now.
See,
we just go from one.
We go one
to
from one.
another.
Yeah,
and it's hard to keep up the names.
Fred Gray.
Freddie Gray.
Freddie Gray. I think
right.
Sorry.
Right after she charged them, she explained yesterday that she had presented the case to the grand jury. Now that was the news coverage at the time, on the day when she came out and gave her speech as far as charging him. The first thing that came out was, why didn't she do it through the grand jury system? Why didn't she do it in that manner? Why didn't she send it to the grand jury when she did? And the grand jury came out with even harsher charges than what she did. And it was amazing to me, because she did what should have happened in Ferguson. She presented the case as a prosecutor. Now, if you remember when Ferguson prosecutor came out in the middle of the night, in the cover of darkness, he came out and said, we gave all the information to the grand jury, and then we let Wilson talk for 4 hours, and we kind of waited to see what they would say. Versus she presented a case, and this is what we have. Aggressively going after what she believed to be a crime, and they did it, and they came back with an indictment on all of them. And I thought that was excellent.
Again, doing a comparative analysis of these situations, you see very different things happening. Mm-hmm. And
the coverage is different.
The coverage is different. The reaction.
The reaction.
That's the biggest part of the story, right? I mean,
she's rushed to judgment. Oh my goodness, what's she doing? She can't do that.
Because this could have been done in those other venues.
Yeah,
it should have been done in those other venues.
There was a time in my life, y'all, when things like this would happen, and they don't happen too often, right? You sit back and say, "Wow, the system is working." But it used to be a time when I would, just the journalist in me would go and say, "I'm going to listen to Limbaugh tomorrow and see how he reacts to this," or "I'm going to watch Fox News, the cable channel, and see how they react to this." I just left it alone this time, because I know they're going crazy.
Yeah, and see, we grew up together, so we kind of think in the same way, because I used to do the same thing. You have to listen to the other side.
During the unrest in Baltimore, I did turn to Fox. That was nowhere near there. I don't know. It was down the whatever.
Probably after 6 Hillary Clinton stories, right?
Yeah.
When is she going to talk? She hasn't talked in 3 days. She hasn't talked in 3 hours.
She hasn't answered the question. Oh yeah, by the way,
it's amazing how they didn't even have what happened, and the indictments. Not the indictment, the original charges. They didn't even have that at the top of their list.
Well, one of the things that their pundits led off with is rush to judgment. They've rushed to judgment. Oh, she's rushed to judgment. She's going to try them without knowing all the facts. There's no investigation to rush to judgment. And now I didn't get a chance to see it yesterday. I'd be interested to see what they said yesterday.
Right. Now, locally, Police Chief Craig's contract has been extended 2 years. What do you think?
Well, and aside from I have, and I probably talked about it on the broadcast, I have some style issues with Chief Craig, just the manner in which sometimes he does things, says things, and operates from, from a perspective of in terms of public relations. I have to set that aside and say that it at least does make some sense for continuity and crime fighting to have the chief, the leader of the department, as long as that person isn't involved in scandal or alleged scandal. If in fact it appears that he or she is doing their job, there is something to be said for continuity. We've had this conversation many times about Detroit public school chiefs and revolving door and how that
Right.
operates against a lot of times morale. I've talked to cops. Most of them seem to like this guy, or they don't at least have an adverse reaction to him. I mean, I live in Elmwood Park, and when he went down, and I've talked about him going into the Martin Luther King homes and going in there, I had some concerns about how it was carried out, but at the same time, I wanted it done. And so you have to ask yourself, as a Detroiter, and this is my analysis of it, I think it makes some sense to extend the contract because it appears that he's doing a decent job. I'm over the $225,000 thing. There's nothing we can really do about that. The reality is that's what he would be earning in other parts of the country.
Absolutely.
We get into a lot of class warfare here in
Right.
Detroit because
Yeah,
I think a lot of
because-
us are, a lot of us came up in assembly lines, and we're not necessarily.
Yeah, but my thing is, I don't see why people rail against these salaries because they're comparable in other cities. I know Detroit has had a hard time and has been bankrupt and so forth, but some of these jobs, because they listed all the salaries of the mayor's staff and so forth. People are really against them. Why is that? What do you think?
Well, at the time, and just Detroit just getting out of bankruptcy, I think that's if we don't have enough money to pay our bills, how can we pay these types of salaries? And there was a large outcry, a public outcry on the emergency managers' staff's
Yeah.
salaries. And so that in that respect, I imagine that's why there's such an outcry on salary. And you're right, we're all blue collar, and everywhere I go in the country, that's my battle cry. I'm a blue collar guy. I'm from Michigan. I'm from Detroit, so I'm not.
I strap up my lunch bucket.
Exactly.
I put on my
Right.
dungarees, and
I just do a
make
hard day's
45
work,
yeah.
and I go to work, I go home. Now, as far as the chief is concerned, I would say that what are the crime statistics coming out of Detroit over the last several years since he's been?
Oh, you're not going to. And I see where you're going, and you clearly aren't going to find dramatic improvement in FBI crime index
Right.
statistics. I mean, they've argued for years about how they're calculated. I'm not even talking about how they're calculated. I'm just saying from a standpoint of somebody who's been in the town for almost 50 years. I mean, Detroit has
You're
been
almost
broke.
50?
Yeah, almost 50. Yeah, it's
my
crazy.
goodness.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, but so crime. The crime.
Notice I'm staying.
But the crime that we've had, I mean, B&Es don't stop just because somebody
Well,
got placed
and I don't,
in.
and
My wife's car's been. I always like that. My wife's car's been stolen 5 times in the last calendar year, and so I'll probably be the first person to say, "Get him out of here."
Well, that's just it. I'm not saying if it has not become dramatically worse under this chief, and if they've either stayed steady and or even gotten better, and you see some community involvement with the police. We don't have people dying in custody in
Right,
Detroit.
right.
So those small things are starting to improve. Now you see police presence where there needs to be a police presence, and so those small things are improving. So if the piece of machinery is not broken, then there's no need to fix it, I guess, in that respect.
Now, the one thing I'm worried about, and this is not necessarily on him, at least not right now. He's too young in his tenure, going on 2 years, I guess it's been. But he even said himself on a radio show in the last 2 weeks, something that a lot of us already know, that more than 50% of the sworn police officers don't live in the city. That's not on him. That's something that happened in Lansing 20 years ago. So no elected official in Detroit can deal with that. But the other thing he also pointed out, and this is anecdotal stuff that I've seen, just when you see new classes of police, almost 2 out of every 3 a sworn officer is not African American in a town that's probably at least 82 or 83, maybe 84% African American. I'm concerned, quite frankly, and when we were on the Charter Commission, this is why I was one of the voices that led and said we need to continue to have a civilian police oversight mechanism in the city, because I'm really concerned about occupation of a different type when it comes to police. Where do they live? What do they look like? I mean, if you're coming from
Really?
yeah, I am. If you're coming from Kego Harbor every day and you don't live in my community, you don't understand my community, you're going to have a issue.
Different attitude.
Yeah, a
Right.
different attitude.
different
and issue.
policing
probably
attitude.
response.
And you know, and I've battled with people in the last 6 weeks. Well, Detroit's not Baltimore, and Detroit's not Ferguson. Guess what? The trends are
It
showing
can
you
be,
that it could very well can be. And it was 20 years ago when Malice Green got beaten by 2 white cops while a 3rd white officer stood and watched. So all of this ain't necessarily about black and white. It's about a mindset. And I'm just one that believes that if you understand the community, chances are you're going to be better suited to serve that community. That's a problem of mine. You know, some people, I mean, I think reasonable people can disagree, but that's the way I roll on that one.
Wow. Well, you know, Detroit's population loss is slowing. Were you surprised at that?
No. You know, all you got to do is go downtown.
Go downtown.
I mean,
know,
I was down
it's a-
there
it's
the
a-
other
or
day.
midtown.
I was going down.
I call it
was,
the Cass Corridor. but-
We used to call it the Cass Corridor, exactly.
I was detoured to some of those streets on my way down to Bird's Place, and I just saw. I said, "Golly." I was going some blocks and I didn't see any black people.
Let me tell you something.
Well,
no, go ahead.
Yeah, there was my brother one of my oldest brother who lives in D.C. now, who's lived in D.C. area for about 20 years now, came home and we happened to be hanging out downtown during the jazz festival, and we were down at one of the local cigar establishments outside, and there was a young non-African American lady. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and she was walking a little dog. One of those little rat dogs that sit on your lap when you're driving your car at 1 o'clock in the morning. And he was flabbergasted. He was like, "What is that?"
He's the same.
That's the exactly.
I was
That's
going to say the same thing.
that's what's changing, and that's why I think the population, and that's gentrification, regentrification, or whatever you want to call it. But there's let's double back and come back into Detroit, and it's changing, and there are a lot of things changing downtown.
The only thing different in the anecdote that I was going to give is that it was 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and the white couple was walking a German Shepherd, and so we lived downtown for 11 years, and you know it's you see. You know, you were accustomed to seeing white people on hockey night for the Red Wings,
or baseball,
or the hoedown.
The hoedown.
But on any given Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, sun comes up and a white couple walking the German Shepherd. I was like, it's 2000, 2001. I was like, wow.
And this is the same
Stuff is about to change.
About a year ago, I was leaving work, and we talked about this on the show over a year ago. When I left work, there were a white guy jogging downtown at 7 o'clock at night, and that's usually when you're leaving work, everyone's getting out of the city. When you're jogging, that means you're going to go somewhere and shower or whatever, right downtown. And so you saw that change, and that change is coming, and it's coming a lot faster now. We talked the last time I was here about how there are billboards in New York saying, Detroit is hiring, and trying to get people to come and start investing in Detroit.
Well, we're just saying what's happening in the northwest quadrant of DC. We're saying what happened in Harlem 15 or 20 years ago. It's not different. I mean, it's different for us.
Richmond,
Richmond,
Virginia.
We have a phone call. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm enjoying the show, but I like the police chief. And we have to remember, Malice Green was also killed under a black administration. We had a black police chief, we had a black city council, and a black mayor's department. So I think that we, the citizens in there, we organized a block club. And I think that our block clubs are going to be the strength, and they are going to be the deterrent to this violence and this stealing that we the people going to have to take over this city. Like-minded people got to come together and organize block clubs and associations to make this city a better city for all of us. And my family, my black family, I have none of my family living here. They prefer the suburbs. Black people are sitting in the suburbs, in the restaurants, while white people are downtown. So my people said they're not coming back to Detroit. They want to live in the suburbs where they are. They like it out there. And, the young white man here, he lives downtown. He said, Miss Marcia, he said, I'm just 15 minutes away from my job. I like downtown. I got all the facilities and restaurants and theaters that I can go to, and I'm close to work, and that's why I want to live downtown. So we can decide where we want to live at, but I think police chief is doing a good job, but it's going to take us into these communities to organize Black Club. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, she mentioned something that's very important versus, thank you very much. She mentioned something that's very important versus the color of their skin. She said like-minded people. And that's very important because that's what builds community. That's what builds communities. Now, she's been saying something that people have been railing for a long time, saying, we had black mayor, black city council, black everything, and how'd that work out for you, basically?
Well,
I'm not.
Yeah, I know. But I'm going. You see, I'm winding up.
Go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead, Ken.
No, I mean, look, it's very true. The caller was on point. I mean, I mentioned many moments ago. I mean that there was, Freddie Douglass was not a street officer. He was a lieutenant that watched Butson and Nevers essentially, bust Malice Green's head. And the reason why the city had a consent decree, was under consent decree from the federal government, is because there were just atrocious situations going on at 1300 Beaubien that rivaled, slave dungeons. I mean, it is more about a mindset than race. But let me tell you something. I mean, I'm not willing to give up some of the things that we fought for, one of them being the civilian police commission that oversees the citizens that oversee police actions and help develop strategies, because I'm not absolutely important. I'm not so young. I mean, I remember, Daron, we were basically the same age. I mean, I grew up going to anti-stress meetings with my mother as a 5-year-old. Right. I remember what this town was like in 73.
Those brown four-door sedans with the big guys in them.
We have another call this morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Hi, Mr. Coleman.
Hi, Miss Person. Let's see if we can go 2 for 2 today.
How you doing?
Good to hear you.
I've been listening at your program. It's very interesting, but most people, I don't think they know what they're talking about. I was born here in the city of Detroit. I was born on Hendricks, 506 Hendricks, in 1936.
Right. Oh, Jesus.
I moved on St. Albans in 1939. My dad died in 1939, and we moved on Benton Street in 1939.
Then you should know some of those Calhouns from over there.
Yeah, well, yes, and then on top of that, my family, we all lived here. My brother played with the Harlem Globetrotters. He just died. I went to Brewster Center all my life. I went to Sacred Heart School, where they said black people didn't go to, and that was in the 40s. We enjoyed ourselves down off of Hastings Street. People got along with each other. Brewster Center was the best place to go for people. It was built in the 30s, and it was built for the poor people and people to have some place to go. I know about the city of Detroit, and when they talk about Black Bottom, that was on the other side of Gratiot. It wasn't on Hastings Street. It was on the opposite side of Gratiot,
south of Gratiot,
going towards
the river.
Lafayette and those places over there. We had Miller High School that didn't have a gym. They used Brewster Center to have their programs and stuff at. They didn't have a gym when my cousin and them were going to Miller High School.
And the boys, and Ms. Person, you know this story, and that's why I wrote $1 Million Worth of Nerve. The boys basketball team won 4 citywide championships in a row in the late 40s and early 50s. Didn't have a gym to play in. Had to play at the Brewster Center.
Right. That's right.
That's the city. See, that's the city.
That's why I'm listening to y'all's program. Y'all got people calling in and say, well, black people didn't do this and black people moved out there where the white people were. That's a lie. The white people moved where the black people lived at because they wanted to take this part of the city back over. and that was off of Hastings Street. That's why General Motors, Fords, Chrysler, and them got together and put that expressway over there so they wouldn't have Brewster Recreation Center. Then they got a young lady that came from Chicago or wherever she came from that worked for one of our mayors and said it was 2 bricks loose in Brewster Center, and they closed it down. And when they named it Wheeler, Brewster Wheeler, that was way after it was Brewster Center. Brewster Wheeler was named in 1970s Brewster Wheeler Center. It was not Brewster Wheeler Center. It was Brewster Recreation Center.
Leon Wheeler
We
was
had
the
every
longtime
bar.
recreation center
I was
department.
a child, and I still remember this because it was a good place to live at. I was a child. I moved on Beaver when I was 9 years old. And I remember everything that went on down there, the riot in 1943. I remember all of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All of the pawn shops that was on Hastings Street got all of the businesses now. We had A&P.
Right.
We
And
had
that was-
every store
Right,
you want. You
right.
didn't have
Well,
to go
we know-
downtown.
And
We
that's
didn't
and that's
have to
all
go
outlined
downtown.
in
And people that live in Detroit ought to
Well,
stop lying.
I remember
and tell the truth.
when I was a
we
child.
got good
Miss-
fellas.
I know
We
Right.
got good fellas.
There were
and
things-
people that got good fellas was on the welfare, the ADC. Most of the people in the city of Detroit was on the welfare and the ADC. The project
not-
was built for low-income people. You know who lived
Oh,
in the
Miss-
project? People with husbands and worked at Thor's factory and did all of that stuff.
Well,
so
thank
stop
you.
talking about the lower class people.
Well, we're not-
Talk about the people that really screwed this up, and that's the people that's in office now.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
That's the people that's in office now. And thank you for taking my call.
Thank you
and
very
I
much.
applaud you, Mr. Coleman, because you're finally waking up.
You're finally. I've been wondering that for years, Ken.
Took a
Since
while.
Winship was
Took a while.
finally
Yeah,
time
yeah.
you woke up.
Well, Miss Person goes back with me almost that far.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That's
Well, yeah,
awesome.
there were things when I came up in the 50s and 60s here in Detroit that we were able to do. Oh, well, of course, I didn't know that there was a issue until I found out it was an issue, you know, because I was basically a child. But I do know I used to live on Hogarth as a kindergartner near Dexter, not far from the boulevard. And my first 3 school years were spent at Mar Elementary. But I do know that maybe 15 years prior to that, the Tireman Avenue Association or whatever, who used to run blacks out of their homes, they were right in that same neighborhood and everything, and things started to change. And I also went to St. Teresa's in the area. It was still kind of mixed, but then it just took a turn.
Well, see, I think we keep saying here in the United States that, whites aren't ready to have that conversation on race. They're not ready to have that real honest conversation.
Well, they said they're going to do it on Mackinac. Again.
Well, but that's on Mackinac.
Yeah,
now, how do you have it on Mackinac when
Mackinac.
all the blacks are here?
Right,
But just like we're projecting that out, we need to look in that mirror and say we need to have an honest conversation about
Right.
race as well within our own community. I'm not saying that just because we had black rule in Detroit or the administrations and police departments were run by persons of light color skin, of us, means that they were bad. I'm just saying that they were people too. They were politicians. They are politicians. They are politicians who don't even see color other than green. And we need to have a similar conversation about, is it because they're black that they're doing these things and they're bad, or is it because there are people who engage in these acts and they happen to be black?
Well, Daron, people are walking with their feet. I mean, we have this conversation about black and white Detroit all the time, and it's warranted. Don't get me wrong. I participate in it all the time. I write about it. But the reality is that 250,000 people have left this town since 2000, and 75-80% of those people are black.
That's
so
correct.
so the reality is, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, some of this is a class struggle, and some of it is black folks. Some black folks having a different point of view than other black folks, and some of it is black and white.
Well,
I think
we
we need
have
to
a
have it
call
all.
on the line. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, everyone,
Hi.
Good morning.
and happy holidays.
Hey, same to you.
Same to you.
Same to you,
before I
Tom.
leave. You know what? In terms of Detroit, now was a bad time to be leaving. if you look at if you look at the big picture.
What was that
He
first
said, yeah,
statement
now
you
is
said?
now is a bad time to be leaving.
No, I said now is a bad time to leave Detroit.
That's correct.
Because if you look at the big picture, I've said it before. Detroit is like a berry on a vine, and it's ripening, and it's getting riper by the day. And eventually, those people who might want to come in, if you don't come in now, say maybe 5 years from now, I don't think anybody will be able to get in. And and just like you're talking about all of the development that's going on, eventually, the stuff is going to metastasize, and it's going to spread out here in the part of the city, 90% of it, or maybe 98% of it, that makes up Detroit. And I'm talking about the neighborhoods.
Well, I think, Tom, I think you do have somewhat of a point. Some of this stuff will be the rubber meeting the road. We've had these conversations about the changing complexion of downtown Detroit. The white folks who are coming back are generally in two categories. They're empty nesters. They raise their kids, and they like to go to the Fox to go to the show, to see a show. They like to go to see the Tigers and the Lions and the Red Wings. And so they've moved down here into condos and the like, and maybe a couple in their 60s and 70s.
Restaurants downtown.
The other group are young 20-somethings. Now, the rubber is going to meet the road is when they get married and have kids, are they going to stay here?
Right.
Will they create some type of hybrid school system, tax credits for auto insurance? Schools that are de facto, not de jure, designed for certain people. Now, this stuff has happened. Somebody's going to call and say, Ken, you're talking conspiracy theories. This stuff has happened in other places. Go to Harlem. Go to Harlem and find out what's going on. Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Around the Barclays Center. Some of this stuff is happening in other places. Now, all I'm suggesting is, because I'm somebody who has said for the last 20 years, I think we need to, the biggest problem that we have in Detroit is we don't have a strong middle class. I'm fine with whatever those people look like. All I'm simply suggesting is I want those people to understand the history of this town and certain things that have happened in this town, because if we're not cognizant of it, Tom, whether we be black or white, whether we've lived here for 30 days or 30 years, we're going to repeat the same stuff over again. That's all I'm saying.
And that's what's the great things about your books. As far as the history of Detroit, the nerve of the folk who actually believe that they can build here and be here, and now the radio. I'm real excited to see that.
Well, because look at, we had a conversation 50 years ago, and the city fathers and mothers said, well, we need to build a freeway where Hastings exists because we want to get the urban motorist out of town as fast as possible.
We need to build a freeway.
The freeway.
We're going to put it in Hastings.
We're going to put it in. But guess what's happening downtown right now? There are the conversations about turning that freeway, the I-375 part, into a classic business thoroughfare again, like you'd see in old Washington Boulevard downtown or on Woodward. Again, let's be cognizant of the stuff that happened 50 and 60 years ago. In some cases, we're having the same discussions again, and I just don't want us to make the same mistakes.
Those Tina discussions were more nefarious than absolutely is now.
Well, I think it's sleight of hand, brother. I think some of it was out cold and overt. And it might be a little more covert now, but at the end of the day, it's still the end of the day. You can call Cass Quarter Midtown all you want. I remember when it was like 20 years ago.
When they say Midtown,
Miss Brenda called. Would you please call back, Miss Brenda?
When they say Midtown, I absolutely don't think of Cass Corridor, because I think of Cass Corridor being Cass Corridor.
Yes.
I think when they say Midtown, I'm thinking Fisher Theater. And going towards Dexter and Hitsville and all that. But now that's called Midtown to try to change the name.
And then you see the historic preservationists upset about a couple of hotel buildings in the path of the new Red Wing Stadium. Nobody said nothing when they ran John White out of the Gotham Hotel. And the Gotham Hotel got tore down within a year of its closing and sat there for 50 years. They're building something there now. But it got tore down 50 years before they built something there. All I'm suggesting is, I can roll with you on some of this.
Being done. There's a lot of calculation being done.
Yeah, so I get passionate about this stuff. Tom?
Okay, well, anyway, you all have a good holiday.
Thanks a lot. You have a great holiday. Thank you.
All right.
We have another call. Good morning. Hello? Oh. Call back. We'll try and get it. Let's try to. But I noticed that things are happening. A lot of people saying maybe I may hold on to this property in Detroit, so forth and so on. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Had you thought about moving out?
I've been I've been on the bandwagon for leaving. It's a battle that my wife and I have. Friendly battle that we have all the time.
Anywhere.
She said you're not going anywhere. So,
Kim Coleman, you are Detroit. I mean,
now Kim is well. Here's the thing, and my good friend I grew up with, Daron Calhoun. I mean, I want to be one of these people that you can love Detroit from 50 miles away or from 500 miles away. It's
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why I write these books, because I have a passion and love about the city. I have concerns about its future and its present day form. But that doesn't mean I don't love it, and that doesn't mean I can't contribute to it. I mean, for the most part, I pray and party in the city.
right now,
I always will.
Exactly. Let me tell you something I tell my kids, especially my son, because my son went down to Morehouse. My oldest son went down to Morehouse, and now the rest of my kids are all out in Georgia going to school. The one thing I told him all the time was something that I absolutely believed in and did. You have to go out and get your experiences, go out in the world, get evicted, lose your car, fall in love, all that things, get all that experience, and then come back and help fix the city that made you. And so one of the things that I made sure that I did was get back to Detroit. And until just recently, I stayed here for 15 years doing everything I can for the city of Detroit. So I absolutely agree with you.
Miss Ware is on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah, we can speak up a little bit. We can hear you.
Could you speak up a little?
Good morning. Can you hear me
There
now?
you
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Okay, I just want to put in, okay, I live in Madison Heights now. The reason I moved here is because the insurance company gave me $100 difference on my car insurance from in Detroit.
Redlining.
I had just retired. I had went on a fixed income. I couldn't afford the insurance in Detroit. That's the only reason
Right.
I moved out here.
But it doesn't mean that you, just like Ken said, doesn't mean you can't pray and party in Detroit. I mean, that's absolutely
Oh, I
right.
love Detroit. I was born in Detroit.
Absolutely.
A lot of us that have been here for a long period of time in the city proper, we don't necessarily realize it, but you get nickeled and dimed in the city. If you read the fine print on your utility tax, we have a city income tax. Now you're in the South now on the Eastern Seaboard. There are a lot of places along the Eastern Seaboard and down South. They don't even have a city income tax. You've got a city income tax for non-residents and residents. That doesn't happen in other parts of the country. The auto insurance that we pay, I mean, after a while, $5 and $10 and $50 and $100 add up over the course of a year or two or three. So there are people like Kim and myself who live in the city, and it's almost because of a dying passion about the city and wanting to be part of it because we've always been here. But we pay far more. Southfield is getting a little different than it was. But I remember when my brother first moved out to Southfield, and we compare notes and be like, "Oh man, are you kidding me?" I heard the new line was going to be 12 mile. Man, let's move to Southfield. I mean, it's very tough. And people now, we've got retirees and pensioners. You're asking people to pay extra money for cars, pay a utility tax, pay a city income tax. Then they cut your pension. It's tough, man.
It's very tough. It's very tough.
My point is, when I retired, are you there?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay, when I retired, I took a $10,000 pay cut. So I had no choice.
Yeah.
I understand.
I don't think I'm going to retire.
I'll come back to Detroit in a minute.
Yeah.
Well, keep your eyes on me because there may be an opportunity. I mean,
Well, I have a year left to pay on my car. Once I pay that car off, I'm coming back.
There you go. There you
All
go.
right. Well, thank you for
And we'll be
calling.
looking
And
for
you
you.
have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was telling my wife this morning we need to go down to Easter Market. Well, what we need to go down there for? Just to go. Oh man,
Flower Day is nice.
I knew it was.
Oh, we have another call.
Oh, my
Good
goodness.
morning.
It's the celebrities.
Good morning.
People call in.
Yes. This is for
Look good in
Ken.
comparison. See?
You mentioned the Gotham Hotel.
Yes.
Do you remember the restaurant that was across the street from the Gotham Hotel?
Yes.
He used to be a waiter there.
That's true.
that
I was 9 years old, and I was.
What was the name of that restaurant?
Are you talking about inside? You talking about the
No,
the Ebony Room?
Across the street from the Gotham Hotel.
Oh no, I don't remember. I thought you were talking about the Ebony Room, the fine dining.
No, right across the street.
no.
I
What-
never
what-
hear that restaurant mention, because I worked there. I'm in my late 70s. I worked there. I came there from Benedict College as a young lady. I worked that restaurant. It was called the Pelican.
The Pelican. Oh, so
Yes.
on John
all
R.
all the celebrities
Right.
that came in, that stayed at the Golf Hotel, they would come there, and I was their main waitress, and I got some good tips. The
Well, that's
Pelican.
that's $1 million worth of
That's
nerve.
exactly. That was right
Hey,
before you worked
I
at Big
never knew
Boys.
that
That's
name.
true.
You should mention that. The Pelican Restaurant.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm Dorothy Ware.
what's your
Right.
name? What's your name?
My name is Dorothy Ware.
Oh, pleased to
bless
meet
your
you.
heart.
And thank you for
Okay,
calling.
take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Have a
you.
great holiday.
We have one more call. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Yes. I came in on the tail end of when Ken was talking about the young white people moving back to Detroit with children. Now, I didn't catch all of that. Now,
Not having
what will
children
be
yet.
true test is when people that have children from the age of like 5 to 16. Now, that, like Ken was saying, and I just caught bits and pieces of that about him mentioning something about the children. Because their school, they won't trust the Detroit school system, and I don't think they will trust their children just walking the streets of Detroit.
Let me let you in on a
possibly
secret.
venturing out of the neighborhood. Now, but it'll always be hipsters, as they call them, coming along.
Let me let you in on a secret.
Right.
And some enterprising reporter. I'm doing PR now. But some enterprising reporter is going to do a story in the next year or so. There is a small, tight-knit group of white mothers or white women who either have children or are expecting to have children. They're having conversations now about
About the school.
about where to send a child to school in the Lower East Side area.
Whoa.
Part of Midtown. Part of it is Midtown too, but in Lafayette Park and in Elmwood Park, you're going to see again. Somebody said this not too long ago. They can do anything in Lansing they want to do. Watch for the day when they start. Now, auto insurance rates are zoned anyway by the zip code.
Right.
Watch some legislation pop up within the next couple of years that will split maybe a zip code. Right. If you're 48207 and you happen to be south of, I don't know, Antietam or Gratiot, as opposed to north of Gratiot, you may get a better rate. I guess the point I'm making is some of this stuff may sound like conspiracy theories, but if these people are going to stay here, they're not going to pay this insurance rate.
They're not going to pay the insurance rate.
They're not going to send their child to any old Detroit
Exactly.
public school. It's not going to happen. So the rubber's going to meet the road. It'll be interesting to see, but I understand there's conversations going on right now on both fronts.
See, and then the issue though becomes, and in my world, the issue becomes, why couldn't those conversations happen 20 years ago? And why did it have to wait for white mothers moving into the city of Detroit and not black mothers over in the King homes,
But they're
wanting
trying to
better
get
schools
numbers
for
up.
Miller and those other schools surrounding that area? Indeed.
What'd you say?
Okay, but they're trying to get the white numbers up, but still, I think they just want to lose them when the kid. I see what you're saying, Ken, but about the schools in the lower east, the mothers are talking, but I just don't think that they'll trust their kids being in this
Well, see,
area.
they may not, but what they'll do.
From that age, from about like say 5 to 16, they just will not
Right.
trust their
And what
kids
they
venturing about.
what they
Because
may
they'll
end
have
up
to
doing
get
is they
out of
may
that
not
gated
trust them.
community or that area where they live.
Right. They may not trust them, but then will go to work to change
Well,
it.
let me tell you something. This is 20 seconds, 15 seconds. My 6-year-old went to a Montessori in what's called now Midtown. If you walk through the halls, it looks like the United.
He's getting tall.
Well, it looks like the United Nations. And so those kids are 5, 6, and 7 years old. Now, they made different decisions about where to send their children. Some of them are going to places like Friends. Some of them are going to Catholic schools. But they all aren't going to go there. This conversation that they're having is real. And, again, I'm not hating on it, not overly concerned about it. I only get concerned when some people don't tend to respect the history of this town and the people that have been here, like the Tina persons that have been on Mack and Bewick for 50 years and grew up on Benton in the Brewster homes. I mean, that's where I jump off the train with those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for calling.
Thanks for calling.
We have to kind of move on. We won't get to our other topics because I promised Ken I wanted him to talk about his new book. This man is prolific. He has a new book coming out called Soul on Air, and this is going to be very interesting. Why don't you tell the audience about
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the commercial. It is Soul on Air. It is the history of African Americans in radio here in Detroit. And well, one of the idea really came about a year ago, Brenda and Daron. HT and Henry Tyler and R.J. Watkins had a group of DJs from the 60s and 70s on this set. And they just talked about the old times. Butterball Jr., Jay Butler, Ken Bell, 5 or 6 of these guys. And they were talking about the old times, and I'm sitting there watching and said, I'd love to write about those times.
Fred Gorey?
I mean, music, you appreciate this, Brenda. Music is the soundtrack of our lives.
Yeah.
And so just as we grew up listening to the Supremes and Temptations, the people who announced those songs onto the air, yeah.
And they were our conduit to, if they're going to be in town, if we could catch them. I mean, they just got us excited. Here's so-and-so's new song, and we usually like both sides.
Yeah, and it was more than just the music as well. I mean, they were just like you say, they were conduit for information going into the black community.
And they were personalities, and we liked them too.
They were personalities. They were political leaders. A couple people have told me something over the last couple months when I've been writing. If there wasn't a Butterball Jr., there might not be a Coleman Young. And it sounds like a statement that may be hyperbole a little bit, but when you go back and look at some of the rallies, some of the messaging that came over WCHB, WJLB, WGPR, these men and women, Martha Jean the Queen Steinberg. I mean, Martha Jean the Queen, I interviewed John Lord Booth, the owner of the
Booth Broadcast.
Yeah, that's the JLB and JLB. He told me that in 1975, Martha Jean the Queen probably brought in about $200,000 a year. Now, in 1975, that's some serious money. She had a voice. When the DJs went on strike there, the community came out and supported them. They were some of the first people to talk about black ownership. They were some of the first black people to talk about black and political empowerment. And so the book will be published next month. During Black Music Month, and I'm really excited about it. We've talked to everybody. I don't know. We've got in the book Jack Sorrell, the great jazz DJ of the 1950s, all the way to people like John Mason and Frankie Darcell and everybody in between.
Mojo.
Do anything on JZZ?
Oh, absolutely. You can't do a book without talking about JZZ and CHB and really, Dr. Haley Bell and Dr. Wendell Cox, the WCHB and CHB. What Dr. Bell did was extraordinary. Dr. Bell was a dentist who was making $30,000 in 1930 during the Great Depression. Dr. Bell didn't have to start a radio station. He was very well off, and he didn't do it for the money. He did it because he wanted to leave something for his family and help empower his people. And so he applies for an FCC license, and people like John Lord Booth and others blocked him along the way. They wouldn't get the only place they would give Haley Bell a license was 35 miles out on Inkster. So when people say, "Well, why is it out there on Henry Ruff Road? Why you have to drive? Why wasn't it in the city?" Because the FCC would not give this black man a license, but they gave him a low-power radio station, and he did extraordinary things with it. And when the Booths owned 25 newspapers and 14 radio stations in the 1960s, WCHB was outrating WJLB.
Sure was.
And there was a time when Butterball Jr. outrated the Tigers.
Let me just say this real quick because we got to tie it up. We used to put a radio on the porch, and we'd all be dancing on the porch. We would just wait to what the disc jockey plays, and then we're ready to dance, dancing on the porch. This hour's gone too quick. We didn't get to cover everything. Ken, congratulations. We, of course, will have you back during Black Music Month to talk about this.
Very proud of you.
And Daron, thank you for coming in and being on the show today. Everybody, we want to have a great Memorial Day. And I'd also like to commend or speak to Orthea's family. May she rest in peace. Services are Tuesday. God bless everyone.
Have a great holiday.